A very warm welcome to you all. Welcome to Designing Cities for All.
The 2-year activity program of Pakhuis de Zwijger,
in which we take a deep dive into designing products,
places and systems for all.
At every level, we can see certain communities being marginalized, being taken advantage of, and it's all part of the design.
When you're neurodiverse, you're in a world that isn't designed for you.
We're not the only species on the planet. The city needs to be also a city for the other species.
And we need to do something because the old structures in which we worked don't work.
Things won't change just if we just let things happen.
Instead of saying, what can we do to mitigate the impacts? We need to start asking ourselves, what is causing that?
Design is political, that we need to design processes, that we are all different, but there are things that unite us.
These are the things that need to be on the table, that need to be recovered in order to redesign the society.
Everything around us was once designed and can therefore be redesigned.
How do we teach design in a way where students can be really critical of the systems of power that have informed and dominated design?
Inclusion happens by design or not at all.
I think it's always some kind of a co-creation process, and you have to make very little steps and then figure out together what works and what doesn't.
it takes as much time to do something good as it takes time to do something bad.
all design tells a story.
But there's also a bit of a need to not just write ourselves into the past, but also kind of write ourselves into the future.
I invite you so much to join my path of liberation, and I'm hopefully being welcomed by your path of liberation.
We have to heal collectively. We have to help each other understand some of these constructs that actually divide us.
Not fitting in was a blessing, or I would have turned out just like you.
Yeah, we just watched the first 2 years of Designing Cities for All, a wrap-up. And I'm really happy to welcome you into a new episode. In 2023 and 2024, this program, Designing Cities for All, is focusing on regeneration and regenerative design. And together with 6 Designing Cities for All fellows and many storytellers, designers, researchers, scientists, others, and all of you, we're exploring today in this program called Regenerate and Activate how designers can actually exert influence on the cultural and political scene and really create change in collaboration with others. My name is Lynn Zebeda, and I'm really happy and honored to be your moderator today, lead the conversations. We have 2 amazing speakers with us tonight in the studio, and our fellow of the night, Sarah Ichioka, also interviewed 2 amazing speakers for us beforehand, international speakers. And we're here with all of us. We're here with all of you. And we're super happy to welcome your participation, both of all of you here and also those watching from home. Very welcome. If you're at home and you have any questions, we have a tool called Mentimeter. You can go to menti.com on any screen that you have in front of you and use the code 24970463, and I'll get it on an iPad here, your questions, and take it along. And if you're just here in the room, feel free in the question rounds to raise your hand and join the conversation. We ready? Yes? Ready and happy, I see. Fantastic. We'll kick off with a short message from our fellow Sarah Ichioka, who is an urbanist, an author of a really interesting book called Flourish, and our DCFA Fellow for 3 months. And she'll introduce today's theme for us.
when situations take a turn we don't like, from a workplace where we might feel uncomfortable to a country where we might disagree with policies being passed by politicians, we can begin to feel small and powerless, or become cynical and shrug our shoulders. Sadly, passivity and cynicism can be contagious. But fortunately, so are their opposites. Activism, and to use the term that my Flourish co-author Michael Pollan and I borrowed from statistician Hans Rosling, possibilism. Activism and possibilism can also be contagious. And that's exactly why I wanted to focus tonight's live cast on the idea of activating our agency. How can we maximize our own and our collective capacity to make positive changes towards the regenerative culture that we want? Which are the places where we have the most leverage in a given situation? Or to use another less mechanical metaphor, if we look around us, where is the ground most fertile for us to plant and tend to those things we hope to see grow to maturity? In previous episodes of this series, I've tried to explore broader concepts, theories, and frameworks that can inform our collective thinking about regenerative design and development. In this one, I wanted to dive directly into practice, looking at examples of designers who are maximizing their own professional agency. Marine biologist and policy expert Dr. Ayanna Elizabeth Johnson has a great diagram I like to refer to in conversations like these. When thinking about where to take action, Dr. Johnson encourages each of us to map out, what are we good at? What are we passionate about? And where does work most need doing? What issues most need our support? The center of those three circles is where we should take action. And in this spirit, I was happy to be able to speak with two inspiring people whose respective work demonstrates the power of pursuing the intersections of professional skill, personal interest, and societal need. Tara Bolade is one of the Mayor of London's appointed design advocates and co-director of award-winning Bolade Design Studio, an architecture practice that delivers residential and mixed-use developments for the public and private sectors through insight-led placemaking. Bolade advocates for responsible and equitable city shaping as a trustee of the UK Green Building Council and as part of the Architects Declare Steering Group. These are two organizations addressing our global climate emergency. Additionally, she's a co-founder of the Paradigm Network, a professional organization championing Black and Asian representation within the built environment. Mark O'Brien is a climate designer, strategist, and design educator. He previously co-founded and ran The Determined, a design strategy and creative consulting studio for brands seeking to solve the climate crisis. Their goal, in their words, was to make climate-focused projects look good, sound awesome, be seen, and get the support they needed. O'Brien also co-founded Climate Designers, a global community of designers and design-adjacent creatives across every industry who are committed to using their skills for climate action. He serves as adjunct faculty at the California College of Arts in San Francisco. For the final episode in this series, I will be in Amsterdam, and I'm very much looking forward to meeting some of you again in person then. Until that time, I hope you enjoy my conversations with Tara Bolade and Mark O'Brien and the other fantastic guests the Packhouse team have brought together tonight. Please take care of yourselves and take care of one another.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Sarah is based in Singapore, so I hope she's fast asleep by now. But we can't wait to welcome you, Sarah, if you see this. And that's going to be next Monday. Very exciting. And I love how she framed the conversation also by this idea of possibilism. I think that means a lot. And also referencing Ayanna, that happens to be the first book here, Ayanna Elizabeth Johnson's book, All We Can Save. Very much worth it. I'm here with indeed one of those inspiring, amazing guests that Sarah mentioned the podcast team brought to us. Victoria McKenzie, welcome.
Hey, thank you.
Hey, very happy to be sitting here with you. And you're the founder of the Research and Restoring Agency. And you do many, many more things and think about many, many more things. And I'm really excited to dive a little bit deeper with you. And maybe we can start with, like, sometimes you describe yourself as an academic activist. Just as a little start, what do you mean by that when you say that? And what does that mean for your daily practice?
I think when it comes to the term of being an academic activist, I'm more so interested in the hyphen in between that. Because I found when I was solely in academia, I was so discontented by that language, but also excited by it. Like really exciting theories, really exciting ideas, but they weren't necessarily being put into practice, more specifically within the community realm. And I realized there were different languages being spoken within the institution and outside of it. And so figuring out a way to oscillate in between these spaces is what it means to be an academic activist for me.
Yeah. You've carved out such a unique path for yourself, and also as the founder of an architectural agency, RRA, which is not your usual architectural agency from what I've seen. Can you briefly take us along in your work with the agency, and also maybe in that tell us about your lessons on today's topic, as in, because I think you started it to also, you have play a role in enacting cultural political change.
Totally. So I'll give you a little story moment. So before starting the agency, I was working, and Angelina and I were just talking about this, I was working on cleaning up oil spills or toxic soil with mycelium in the southern region of the Ecuadorian Amazon. And that was a life-changing experience.
You said that in one little sentence.
No big deal. Cleaning up oil spills caused by Chevron Texaco.
But that's worth it to break. Well, we'll get back to that. Yeah.
But going back to that, because I was always fascinated by natural disaster, that term, or environmental disaster, because environmental disaster is never environmental disaster. It's actually this man-made, perhaps even anthropocentric causation. And placing it upon the onus of the environment doesn't come up with solutions on how to act, but more so it perpetuates what Naomi Klein calls disaster capitalism, this moment of creating these spectacular calamities in order for the system to perpetuate itself once more, to create commodity, to create profit once more. But I think if given sufficient time and support, the earth has an incredible ability to remediate herself. And so in working in the Amazon... yes. In working in the Amazon and in working with fungi, it was a different way of understanding how the earth operated with a type of language, how climate change could be viewed as a certain type of language as well, in the ways that the extraction of fossil fuels creates something quite linear. And I would argue that capitalism itself is this linear mode of productivity, but the earth operates in a sort of cyclical model, and utilizing mycelium within that realm allowed things to cycle once more, which is that what was hydrocarbon, that being oil, became 2 molecules of hydrogen, 1 molecule of carbon, which are atoms that are understood by the earth to cycle once more, right?
Right.
So I could
so
see...
just in layman's terms, you went to the Amazon, it was polluted by oil. The soil was polluted. You brought mycelium into the soil, and the soil kind of saved itself from the oil.
Is
that somewhat like that?
And also working with the communities there, working with the native species of fungi that are there, because you don't want to bring your own thing, and it's like tipping off a whole cycle again. And so I spent some time doing that and realized that I didn't actually want to spend my life cleaning up capitalism's messes. And instead, I wanted to do something more regenerative. And so I entered industry. started working with an architecture firm, but realized all the ideas that I was enchanted by when it came to sustainability was still the sustainable industry, which meant that it was operating on the level of material. We're just going to put this solar panel here and now it's sustainable, but it's still adhering to standardization, and it wasn't actually connecting to the people and the needs of what was happening, so it couldn't actually sustain. And nature, yeah. And so I was invited to work with my architecture firm and live in Ghana, which we spoke about. And once I got to the continent, after moving around a bit, I decided that there's actually an incredible architecture already here, particularly techniques of sun-dried adobe brick and mud rammed earth that works with soil differently. And so I decided to do a research project working on the continent of looking at the 7 regions and the architecture within those spaces, because I didn't want to organize it based on nation states, because those are colonial objects, and instead looking at how people respond to climate and build based on that. Yeah.
Climatic regions? Or?
Exactly, exactly. So you could see a connection between what was the forest region within different countries. And it showed me actually that there was a methodology of design already happening here, which is that there was a recognition of history and ancestry. There was an honoring of ecology and environment as a more than human being that connected with humans. There was community at the center of every facet of design. Within these spaces, the communal space is often the first space to be designed, and then the grid oscillates from there. And then there was mythology and story, which actually became a level of sustainability. People told each other stories, and those stories allowed them to build, or they created meaning to the space. And I saw that these 4 areas were lacking within this particular Western space that we're living in now, or perhaps even the legacies of colonialism that creates capitalism, that creates neoliberalism, to which we're all embedded. But Mark Fisher, for example, says that the most insidious part of capitalism is that we can sooner imagine the end of the world than we can imagine the end of this system.
Yeah, true.
Right?
Yeah.
But there was a before.
Yeah.
And there will be an after.
Exactly.
So how can the pre-colonial past inform a decolonial future, which is the beginning of this agency?
Wow, you've really thought this through, my friend.
I just went on a walk and
this came to you. But I mean, you are a child of the Caribbean.
Yes.
You a PhD in London. You have also roots or like a connection to Toronto, Canada. You live here. You also are in Accra, Ghana a lot. I mean, this gives you such a like 360 perspective maybe on a lot of topics. I wonder how just simply like being like in so many places gives you what it teaches you about how do we move forward? How do we indeed, as you say, like there is going to be an after, right? There is going to be an after this capitalist system that's breaking everything. How does that multi-perspective inform your approach to that?
It shows me that difference isn't something to be afraid of, but something to embrace, right? And I actually think about the soil when I think about difference, because instead of seeing the soil within this lineage of science based on binaries and oppositions, I like to look at it within the lineage of ecofeminism, which sees it as this multi-dimensional, multi-temporal space with multiple species coming in and out like fungi and bacteria and all of this. And if the soil can operate upon that democratic platform of having all these multiple species but still calling itself soil, then there's a way to exist in the world with all of these differences as well. And perhaps that takes a level of negotiation, a level of flexibility. And I'm interested in the ways that negotiation and flexibility can inform design and sustainability differently now.
Yeah.
And I think that also means recognizing that the land has stories and there are different pieces of land. So what does it mean to listen to the land?
Yeah.
As much as we listen to people.
Yeah. Yeah. So the soil comes back.
Yeah.
There as well. The soil connects. Yeah. Beautiful. Wow. we're gonna have a lot more time to talk to each other, luckily. But thank you so much for already like opening up this like whole world to us that exists in you. It's really, really beautiful to have a peek. For now, I would also love to share with you this interview that Sarah has done with a very special architect, designer, urbanist by the name of Tara Bolade, as she introduced to us, the director of Bolade Design Studio. Here we go.
Today, I am so delighted to have an incredibly prolific and energizing urbanist, architect, and community builder with me. Today, welcome to Designing Cities for All, Tara Bolade.
Thank you so much. It's so my pleasure to be here.
Tara, where are you joining us from today, and how are you feeling?
I'm joining from London, or actually Potter's Bar, so just outside London. And believe it or not, it's snowing this morning. We are into March. We haven't seen snow since December. So I'm feeling excited and scared that we're getting snow at this time of the year, which we haven't seen in a few years. So it's very reflective of our topic today.
Indeed. Thanks for sharing that. Very far from the tropics where I am. Now, Tara, your studio has built a reputation for taking sustainability very seriously. And embedded to every project, as I understand it, are green building principles and specifically very rigorous passive house standards at the building level. And at the same time, you're on the record as saying that your ethos is also commercially minded. And I wonder, do you see any tensions between these two approaches?
I think that's really quite an important question. For a little bit of context, as a practice, we've very much set ourselves up from the outset to look at sustainable and sustainably driven projects. And for us, really, that looked at environmental as well as social and economic sustainability. So we always wanted to adopt a holistic approach. We recognize that as a business, it's important for us to stand for what we believe in, but also ensure that our clients, and we have a real mix of client types, both public and private sector, ensure that they're able to meet the commitments that they need to be able to join us on this journey in making more sustainable places and cities. So in terms of those tensions, we feel like because of how strongly we set ourselves up in the first place, a lot of our clients actually come to us because we're quite sustainably driven. The tensions tend to come in terms of how far we push that and what that actually means when we get to project level. So it's never really a discussion of how sustainable will a project be, or if a project will be sustainable or not. It's usually, where are we going? Are we meeting passive house standards? We're definitely going beyond building regulations as we have in the UK at the moment. So it's where we land. It's important for us to also tap into the client's commercial ambitions. So they'll usually have ESG targets or goals. And for us here, we're looking at speaking to them in a language of, say, marketing, how their end product, a home, for example, is going to be used by the residents, and if it's going to be able to sell quicker than, say, a development coming down the road. So being able to tap into what drives them, and then using policy as well, recognizing we're in a changing policy landscape and hoping to influence in that manner as well.
In addition to your very busy studio, all that professional work, you also give your time and energy to multiple different organizations and initiatives. These include the UK Green Building Council, the UK chapter of Architects Declare, now part of the larger Global Built Environment Declares movement, as well as the Paradigm Network, which you co-founded. Could you share with our audience, how do you see these diverse initiatives you're involved with working synergistically, to use a great 80s term, to maximize the impact that you personally aim to make?
I think for me, they really interlock, overlap. They really are synergetic in how both of these topics collide. The Paradigm Network, for a little bit of context, is one that I co-founded with 4 others, which really champions Black and Asian representation within the built environment. And that came into fruition about 5-6 years ago, from my direct experience of being in practice and feeling like a lone wolf in a practice setting, and we thought, well, there must be others out there, and how can we find them? And we thought we'd create this platform that allowed people to meet in the first instance, people from different backgrounds, so they felt like they had opportunities to network with each other and grow professionally with each other, and that started with 5 and then 20 and now well over 700 members. And on the other side of the climate emergency aspect is what I do on a daily basis, is what I'm passionate about. And again, came from experience of being at university halls, newly built university halls, and paying extremely high energy bills, and really thinking, why? And I could understand why new builds were performing so poorly. So for me, both of these are passions that I felt I needed to lend my voice to. I feel as architects, urban designers, people, we have much more advocacy than we perhaps initially expect. And I thought, well, I'll use my I'll carve out my little piece of the world where I'm able to lend my voice to what I feel matters and how to make a more equitable society. We happen to be working on a scheme in London, in Brixton, where the building itself sits on a corner of two major roads, which means there's a lot of stop and start on that side in terms of vehicular use. The air pollution is pretty bad at that point, and the majority of the users of this particular building, which is a community center, come from Black ethnic backgrounds who we know suffer when it comes to respiratory diseases. So it's really important for us to be able to see and understand how different people from different backgrounds are affected by these wider climate issues, and how we as architects, urban designers can respond in that way. And so for me, this is where Paradigm, UKGBC, Architects Declare collide, because it hopefully allows me to take a little bit more of a nuanced look at different user groups.
Do you have any practical advice to share with the designers or aspiring designers in the room who are looking to increase their own influence and to take action, but might be feeling limited in some way, you know, maybe by client demand or resource constraints or otherwise?
I hope so. It is very busy. However, I will say I try to keep it simple. I've chosen to work into areas that I'm passionate about. And I feel like, particularly when you're dealing with CAD modeling or the daily administration and emails of life, I think it's really important to be involved in something that you are passionate about. And so certainly for me, when the going gets tough, I try to remember the bigger picture of why I've chosen to look at these. And going to back to the part of agency, I think we do all have so much agency. I don't try to cover everything. I really do try to stick to what I know, and then lean on others, collaborate as much as possible.
All right. I'd love to, welcome. Introduce our second speaker, a collaborative artist and social entrepreneur, Angelina Kumar. Let's give her some love.
Thank you.
Also still for you. Angelina, in the interview, Sarah and Tara were just talking about passion, like do something you're passionate about. And I feel, you in your work as an artist, as a social entrepreneur, can you tell us a bit more about it and what drives you in that?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Passion. I think I have, from the very start when I wanted to become an artist, I had the passion was to connect my love for social work and art and making an impact in the city that I was in or wherever I was. And that's still true today. so that's my passion. And I
and how does it translate? What do you do now? What do you work on?
Well, one of the recent projects that started during the pandemic, actually, right at 2020, was a project called the Creative Playground. And it was in direct response to a need for this open public space that is in the middle of the highway, and it's green, and we've got this train parked in the middle, and it's a place for social entrepreneurs to come and experiment, and they wanted to invite more people in that had creativity and art. And I saw a need in the city of Utrecht where artists needed to kind of step outside of the bubble of the white cube and the galleries and the museums, and to really test what is art when it comes in contact with the public, what is art when it comes in contact with, the mess of society, or when it comes in contact with the local community, which is, there's a nice, beautiful community in the area. And so I set up an artist in residency program where they can experiment and explore and try these things, and it's a nice, crazy mess. A lot of beautiful things have happened.
Can you give examples of what comes out of that mess, as you call it?
Well, I think the nice, exciting thing is that we see that artists kind of come out of their comfort zone, and I've learned a lot through their experiments, especially in relation to nature. One artist really wanted to bring those big birds, I don't know what they're called, arfars, or I don't know.
Ooievaars?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Into the area, and then he did like 6 months of research, and then realized that the landscape didn't match it, and he learned all about what it needed. Then he wanted to bring bees, and then there was some other people that wanted to do something for growing food in the area. So we ended up setting up a plug town and having harvesting it the next year, and having people make salads and soups from it, but also having the frustration of people plucking things, they're like, oh, it's gone. Or having a McDonald's burger put in the middle of all the stuff growing. Or we had one artist who experimented with making a sculpture that was all made from nature. And now you can, I've seen it over time, and it's just gone back into nature, and flowers are blooming out of it, and it's just dissolved back into the ground. And so lots of experimentation, but also with the community. What do people want? When they walk by, they don't know it's art, but it is art, and they're part of it. And what are they doing? And asking questions, and how can we get the neighbors involved? And
exactly. And it seems a lot of your previous work and initiatives have been around making art and design this as a sector more regenerative or more sustainable. And I also heard you say previously, that the sector talks about regeneration and what it means to be green, but then the next step towards actually doing it is often lacking. And I wonder what I hear you say now of, the step from talking about it to actually translating it into action is a very bendy road. It's right. It feels like just try it.
Yeah,
I think that how you see it?
Definitely. I think it's a mixture between looking at what's currently there and responding to a need, taking the time. I think what I've tried to do in my practice is learn from nature, and nature goes a little slower than usual. And if you take time and patience, and you listen, and you talk to people, and you listen to this space, and you see, and you respond to that need, then something genuine comes out, and that's, I find a lot in this fast-paced society, there's not really a lot of room for it. Everything, especially in the Netherlands, is really pre-planned.
Yeah.
And when you pre-plan something, it doesn't give room for change. It doesn't give room for the environment, for the people to respond. And I find that that's so needed, when we're talking about change for sustainability and circularity. Every situation is different. And you can't just put a label across it and say, okay, this is going to be sustainable, or we think this is going to work, or it's really about being in that moment and taking the time to dig in and find the issues, find the problems, find the solutions, find the people to work together.
Interesting. Nature goes a little slower.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's wonderful.
Aren't we supposed to be also part of nature? What's happening?
Well, that's also something I'm recently learning, is that I'm also nature, like my body is. And taking time to slow down and listen to my body, and not rush so fast.
Yeah.
Is actually, it feels counterintuitive, especially in this day and age where we're always working so hard. But like, yeah, that need to slow down actually gives me the perspective to actually observe like nature as well. So
Is that all it gives you?
no, way more.
what does it give you?
Well, peace, I think, a little bit more peace, but also, well, I find it still, I haven't obtained it. It's an inner struggle because we still have to, put food on the table and get all of our projects done. But carving out this time.
Perspective and peace is already like some of the carving out this time.
Carving out time, yeah, actively. I tell people now I'm actively trying to make my schedule smaller and less and empty.
Slower.
Trying.
Trying. Yeah. Nice. We'll also have time to speak with the three of us about this. But we have a third beautiful guest in our midst that I would love to introduce to you. Thank you already, Angelina, for sharing some of your wisdom. I would love to bring in Maaike Bouwman. Maaike is a host and a trainer and a poet and a mother.
And a mother of an 8-month-old.
Of an 8-month-old human. And you work a lot around the themes of environmental justice, climate justice, and in this space. I think there's a lot that you all have in common. Yeah. And you're here to grace us with your words. Yeah. Let's give her a hand.
Thank you, Lynn. It's really wonderful to be here. I'm stepping back into this kind of life and work after having been on maternity leave for almost 8 months or 9 or 10. I lost track of the days, but it's been super inspiring listening to the both of you so far. So, I once heard that in Danish the word sustainability means to skillfully care for. To skillfully care for. And I thought that was such a beautiful expression of what I think is needed in this time. So here's a poem. It's in the midst of new choices and old cycles, of 1 step forward and 2 steps back, of new thinking and old habits. It's in the midst of ever-increasing uncertainty and complexity, making it hard to know anything at all, really. It's in the midst of a constant state of emergency, of crisis upon crisis upon crisis, saying we really ought to do things differently. Rumi once wrote, "Sit, be still, and listen. For you are drunk and we are at the edge of the roof. Maybe that's what we should do, to sit. Sit beside the river and listen. Watch how the river flows effortlessly. Lay down our head in the grass. Ask it how it bends without breaking. Asking to teach us about survival. Know that you are free to choose of your liking, so choose consciously. For this world you inherited from your ancestors to pass on to their great-great-great-great-great-grandchildren. And you sit under a tree they never saw grow, still they planted the seed. Remember to be faithful to what you believe, to trust your heart, to show up with dedication and honesty, because you have come from far. We have come from far, yes. Yes, you were born 1,000,000 years ago, and you've got generations of wisdom flowing through your soul. Now, what would you do differently if you would act your age? What would you say if you would speak your truth fully? See, in this time of history, we are to take nothing personally, so be humble as the sea that continues to kiss the shore, even if she is sent away 1,000,000 times before. As humble as a flower that will blossom and bloom just to feed the birds and the bees and us ultimately. Be humble and not afraid to confront structures and patterns so deeply ingrained into what we do that we think it became part of who we are. A society based on separation and scarcity is not you, it's not me, it doesn't represent us. This is not how we're supposed to be living our lives. And until there is justice, there will be no peace. As long as we're addicted to oil, we won't come clean. As long as we drop bombs, our hands won't reach to shake, touch, clap, or make love. So tell me what you love most deeply and profoundly. Tell me what you came here for. Tell me what you skillfully care for.
Thank you. Very beautiful. Thank you. It almost felt like a poetic recap of what we've been discussing. Very aligned. Before we go further into a conversation, I would love to introduce the second interview that Sarah did for us with climate designer Mark O'Brien.
Mark O'Brien, welcome to Designing Cities for All. We're so happy to have you with us.
Yeah, thanks for the invite. Happy to be here.
Mark, just to kick us off, where are you joining us from today and how are you feeling there?
I am in beautiful San Francisco and it is about 4 p.m. my time. So feeling pretty good after a long day, but got my second win for this.
Excellent. Well, thanks so much for making time for us and finding that second wind. Now, Mark, as I understand it, you trained as a graphic designer, but you've subsequently pivoted to focus your skills towards climate action through branding and strategy. Can you talk us through that journey? I mean, how did you begin to see the compatibility between your initial skill set and then what you saw as being needed to bring environmental advocacy to the next level?
Yeah, I love the outdoors. I love camping, backpacking, trail running. And around 2015 or so, I wanted to level up my work. My work has always been under the umbrella of social innovation, social impact. And around that time, I was paying attention to the news even more. And there's just a lot of stuff going on around climate change. And looking more into it myself, understanding what the researchers and scientists and the activists were saying and doing, they're doing really important work. And I didn't feel like their work was getting the attention that they deserved. And so I started to think about, well, I have a certain set of skills, I'm a designer. I have, skills to make websites or to, create marketing plans, things like that. And it dawned on me that, I can support those that are actually doing the work. And so, designers, I believe, are a really amazing support network, cast member, if you will, to those that are actually on the front lines. Designers have the ability to solve complex problems. We can visualize ideas to make others see what's possible. We can come up with really great messaging, marketing tactics, things like that. And so our set of tools in our toolkit really work well, in my opinion, when we partner up with those that are actually doing the work, that are actually taking climate action.
That's such an important point. Thank you for sharing. And you're also an educator. And as a design educator, what are some of the challenges that you've addressed and overcome in terms of bringing this climate-related content into the curriculum or into your teaching?
Yeah, so just to give you some context, I've been teaching a class called Climate Designers since 2019. And Climate Designers, the class, is part of the larger climatedesigners.org initiative. So if you haven't already, check out climatedesigners.org. I can talk more about that later. But I wanted to use my design education opportunity, the space that I've been in since 2013, teaching at CCA, California College of the Arts. I wanted to use that position in a way to bridge both of these worlds, my professional world and my academic world. And so I pitched the class Climate Designers to my chair, and she, approved it. And so it's been an amazing opportunity for me to take the stuff that I'm learning as a professional and bring it into the classroom. And also it's an opportunity for me to talk to students who are 19, 20, 21 years old, who are going through design school, and they're wanting to take this class. This is an elective class, so they don't have to take it, but they choose to take it. And they're anxious, they're scared, they're worried about their future. And what I'm trying to do is bring solutions and approaches into each and every class so that they can see what's possible, that they know that that journey of them being a climate designers themselves, that they can actually, go down that when they graduate. But the challenges that I'm seeing, and I have a lot of design friends who teach around the country, around the world, and what I'm hearing from them also is that, as educators, whether you're part-time like me or full-time, we have busy schedules. We're busy developing our own curriculum, and we're busy with kind of the logistics of running classes. And a lot of my friends that I've talked to who teach, they don't think of themselves as climate experts or scientists. And so they kind of shy away from bringing this content into the classroom. And some of them just don't even have the mental space to bring this heavy topic into the classroom. And so what we're doing with climatedesigners.org, we have a whole design education initiative. We're trying to make it easy for them to bring this content into the classroom. So we actually have a whole section on the website, climatedesigners.org/edu, that links to various projects and briefs that educators can go and add to their existing curriculum, or maybe they can bring a whole new project into the classroom. So we're giving them different options. Some of them, some design educators might want to take some baby steps diving into this. Others want to just go head first. And I think another thing too is, one thing that I encourage my fellow design educators out there is to just read articles, watch climate documentaries. Like, you don't have to be a climate scientist, but just have a general understanding of what's going on, and not just so much around the science, but also around, how we got into this predicament, right? How, consumerism and how design has played a role in creating our climate crisis.
Mark, how do you personally, this topic can be seen through a lens of joyful potential and hope. And then it can also be quite weighty, right? Even if we're, even if we're ready to take a reparative approach, just beginning to acknowledge the extent of the damage that one needs to work before a net positive impact is achievable. How do you personally stay motivated and energized, and how do you and your collaborators at Climate Designers keep each other motivated and energized to do the work that you do?
Yeah, that's a big one. This is a heavy topic, and to work on this, quote unquote 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, I don't really clock out or even clock in. I'm always thinking about this stuff, and that can weigh me down. And so I don't know, I feel like we have to have fun doing this. We have to use imagination, and we have to think about how we can just, quote unquote, think wrong about how we can approach some of these big challenges so that we can come up with new, innovative, truly innovative ideas. I know that word gets thrown around a lot, but, we have to understand that the world around us, these systems that other people have created, aren't necessarily working for everyone. And so how do we reimagine what that world would look like? And so through our imagination, I tend to think about all the possibilities and opportunities that we can create if we all came together and collaborated on a future that would benefit all living species, right? What an amazing world would that be? And so I'm viewing the climate crisis not so much as a crisis, but more as a opportunity to wake up and reimagine this narrative that we've been told for so long that we have to live under, but why not create a new narrative? And I would love to be a contributor to that new story for our human species, for all species on this planet, and to leave a legacy along with countless other people to say that we tried and we're doing something about it so that future generations can look back on us and know that we didn't give up.
Beautiful. And I bet you anything that people in the room listening to this are gonna be signing up to the cause, and you'll have lots more collaborators. Mark O'Brien, thank you so much for joining us on Designing Cities for All, and all the very best with the amazing work that you're doing.
Yes, indeed. And before we continue on this topic of what can I do, your individual agency, I would love to honor, the insight that we just reached as well of we were born 1 million years ago. We have the wisdom of generations flowing through our veins. And as you put it, Victoria, how that pre-colonial wisdom or insight or knowledge or intelligence can also inform the decolonial, the post-colonial, the whatever is next. So I would love to reflect more on that and how, I mean, because it's a really intriguing thought, but how do we then do that? Like, how do we actually, bring that, the pre-colonial wisdom into the future?
I think, okay, first, before I answer that, because I really enjoyed Mark's talk / conversation, and what it raised for me, not only this aspect of imagination, but I remember, I think it was last summer when academics and artists were striking the MoMA. Do you remember that? And
the MoMA at the Museum
of Modern Art,
in New York. Yeah.
Yeah, and there was an academic named Fred Moten, who I really like, who speaks about the efficacy of protest and the importance of abolition and exodus, or the strike and the exit, to say, no, this thing is no longer working, and to leave. And I think the beautiful role of designers within that is to strike, to exit, and to imagine the new future afterwards, because it's not just enough to leave, but to also create within that, designers and artists, right? And in activating the imagination, I see community as such a seminal aspect to that, because how we are when we get together to figure it out is how we will be in that space we've been trying to figure out. Which is that when we get to that space, it's going to come through contingency, through negotiation, through flexibility, through ongoing changes, through unknowns, but it still is possible.
It's interesting. So you're saying the way we're approaching, wanting to create change, is what it's going to look like afterwards.
Yeah, because we put it into practice, quite literally.
Yeah, very interesting.
And then going back to how the pre-colonial past can inform a decolonial future, I think, well, to give like practical grounding, I think Julia Watson, whose book we have right there, Low Tech, does it incredibly well, which is looking or excavating these indigenous spaces and techniques and reconceptualizing them. And a huge part of radical research and restoring agency is we're not saying let's build with sticks and stones, let's build with mud. We're saying why is just as important as how. The why this structure was built is just as important as how. And there is a way to understand beyond materials and to allow them to meet new technological advancements that we have now. And I guess I'll give you another example, which is that I remember when I was looking at a particular structure called the Tagona structure of the Dogon peoples in the Mali Bandiagara. And one of the first structures to be built is the Tagona, which is this communal area that's built at hip length. And it's a space for elders to gather to speak about conflict and to negotiate things.
Tagona.
Tagona, Toguna. And it's specifically built at the hip level so that you have to stoop when you get in. So no one person can jump to their feet in anger. And I think that concept is so beautiful because this is a moment in which architecture can meet embodiment differently. And for me, understanding how to design at the level of how do I create a structure for conflict negotiation or conflict resolution, as opposed to how can I create a structure from sticks and stones that's at my hip level.
Exactly.
You know?
Why was it built like that? Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
It was built for a need or a wishful wanting something more than what was there.
Yeah.
Rather than just, we need a structure.
Yeah.
It comes from something totally different perspective.
Exactly. And then that means it can take a different or many forms. Because if there's meaning or if there's essence in the design, then the material or then the aesthetic can meet the desire.
Angelina, does this come back in your work as well? Just thinking about either the pre-colonial, the decolonial, the old, the future, the wisdom flowing through our veins.
Yeah, I think listening to what is needed is there, and then you find what is necessary in the moment. And one thing I have learned a lot from this more recent project that I explained is that what I see is that maybe here in the Western society, you kind of just pick things up and place them and then remove them and then place them and place something else. It's like this big jigsaw game, whereas, I'm from India, and things are built, you know, or at least they were, let's not say, were built, you know, or projects and spaces were built over time and generations and with care and love. And it wasn't just something you could easily replace because you wanted a bigger highway or, you know, because maybe recently in the street close by our project, they chopped down over 25 trees and just because they wanted to make the road one way. And they, you know, so these kind of doing it out of this immediate want rather than, you know, what was like the example you gave, it was made for something that is meant to last. And I think that's something from the past that we need to bring back in now.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
Having this perspective of we're actually building something that's going to last for generations rather than, you know, only 10 years and then we're going to rechange it and we're going to remove everybody and we're going to shift everybody. It's
and almost
very different.
It's like, nah, I want this now.
Yeah, it's very different. Whereas, you know, if you put a plant down, it's meant to grow really strong and really big. And it's the same with people and it's the same with projects and spaces. Give it time to breathe, give it time to grow. And there's this beautiful project that's taken thousands of years in Bangladesh. And it's these bridges that are built with trees and it's generations after generations train each other how to make sure that this bridge eventually gets built. And that's to me,
it grows to the other side.
Yeah, it's like, okay, no, I'm not going to see that bridge. I'm not going to be able to cross that bridge, but the generations down the road will be able to. And that's, I think, the perspective that we need to take on.
Yeah. And also that aspect of imagination, being able to see like what it could become.
Yeah, and you might not have the full picture, but you'll only get the picture if you try, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's one thing as an artist. It's like you're told and as an artist is you've got to try, right? You have the picture in your head, but until you draw it, it's like, ooh, actually it doesn't work that way. And then you try something else or you add a new medium and then that's when you find the solutions. It's by trying. But the first try is never going to be right. And I think we need to give room for experimentation and failure. I think there's a lot of lack of space for failure. We always need to be perfect and we always need it to have the final result and reach that, but that might not be the result we actually need.
And you learn growth.
And you learn through the process. Yeah. The process is most important, I think, than, you know, the end result.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then reflecting a bit more on the interview about, you know, like how practitioners in design or creativity or architects or whoever can really activate in themselves this agency, this idea of like, I can influence the bigger picture. Could you both give us some examples of in your own life and work where we're like, hey, this is a way I can actually influence that bigger picture?
Do you want to go first? No, go. How I can influence the bigger picture?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think earlier we spoke a little bit about embodiment and this idea.
You're also a dancer, by the way.
Yeah. We didn't even say that.
Yeah.
But even in the aspect of dancing, as it meets architecture, which are my two loves, I would sooner call myself a spatial practitioner than I would any one of these things because I'm interested in the way that my body moves throughout space, other bodies move throughout space, and the politics that are assigned or aligned within that, right? And I guess I've been thinking a lot about the ways in which, not sustainability necessarily, because I think I'm too tainted by the sustainable industry, but ecology, embodiment, and economy could meet each other differently.
And ecology, embodiment, and economy.
Yeah. And Angelina kind of spoke about the transactions of nature or this harmonious device of nature and what it means to learn from, but also to learn with, and how even within fungi, there's always an equal exchange between a certain amount of carbon that there is to phosphorus within plant roots, right? And so that's an economic transaction that we can learn from. And even the ways in which crisis becomes opportunity within the earth, but also within moments of the body as well, and what it means to understand, listen, and read nature, as well as understand, listen, and attune to our bodies differently, and thus move throughout space differently, and thus build differently. And I guess I was reading this morning, Sonia Renee Taylor's The Body is Not an Apology. And
that's the title of the book?
Yeah.
The Body is Not an Apology.
Really excellent book. Anyways, she specifically works with activists and asks, if you're looking for equality and justice in the world, do you also have an equal and just relationship with your body? And so in recognizing ecology, embodiment, and economy, I feel the space of making a difference within the world or moving differently in the world is recognizing how I attune to my body, how I attune to nature, and how do I consume within this environment? How do I strike on a daily basis within this environment? How do I create my own exodus, which is to say that I'm not going to buy an avocado today because it's supported by the drug cartel in Mexico. Maybe I can just buy avocado when it's in season, kind of thing, you know? So creating those negotiative devices within the everyday life and I guess allowing them to permeate further.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's also a new coming together, actually, of aspects and really finding yourself in the middle of that. What about you, Angelina?
Said a lot.
Yes, but what is it for you? Like you're in your own way. We're all positioned differently in this as well.
Well, I think it changes over time because one thing that because growing up doing a lot of social work, there was this thing that I was always rang in the back of my head is like you're just one drop in the ocean, but you are that one drop, and you're gonna make a ripple. But that's also a understanding that I'm a part of a cycle. That drop also gets absorbed and then it goes up, and so realizing that my part in contributing to the world also has its own cycle. And for me, I think for people who are maybe active in trying to make a difference, you realize that there's peaks and there's lows, and and you need to be aware, like you said, your body also needs to be taken care of because you can't give from an empty cup. And that's something I'm currently going through is like at some point I've burnt out all of my giving and trying, because let's face it, it's not an easy path. It's sometimes you're just constantly up against the systems that are set in place that are really old or really
fighting,
so it's a constant struggle. But sometimes, like who's the gentleman we just saw before? Sorry, I forgot his name. Mark, said you have to find joy in it. So having playfulness in it, having fun in it, but then also knowing when you need to step back and take care of yourself.
Yeah.
And then when do you need to re-engage? Like, who's the right group that's going to re-empower you? Maybe get you back that joy, maybe get you back into the new frame of mind of changing the world together, and that you're not alone in this.
Yeah.
So I think it's not just one
who
thing.
Who do you associate with?
Yeah. It's a whole chain of things, and it's a flow of things. So.
Yeah. And on that, in the book that Sarah co-authored, Flourish, there's also a whole chapter about symbiogenesis, and she defines that as, like what you see in nature happening a lot, actually, like where you become something new together, right? Through cooperative interaction. So an organism can like kind of become a new organism and really become something new. And she uses that as a metaphor as well for, what we're, maybe the regenerative move or shift that we're making. And I know that Angelina, for both of you, like the role of collaboration and this cooperative interaction is really crucial. So I wanted to dive a little bit deeper into that of how do we make that work? Like what is the collaboration that is so crucial in that, and how can we foster it? Maybe start with you this time.
Well, I'm a collaborative artist. Like, it's a part of the core of me. And I think sometimes it's hard to explain that to people because they're like, but what is your practice exactly? What do you make? But I make what I make with someone else or something else or a space or a living organism. Like we were talking about, I'm currently researching, working with mycelium to... So I think that collaboration is really about listening to the other that you are working with, whether it's the space or the environment of the person or people, and finding what sort of situation you're trying to solve together, what you're trying to create together. Maybe it's a narrative, maybe it's an art piece, and seeing what that collaboration and what that brings the two of you together brings about, and being excited for something new, not having any preconceived notions. Sometimes you have the framework that helps But that to me is the most exciting thing about collaboration, is something new will always come about. And that's like thrilling.
Mm-hmm.
And you also, I think another thrilling thing about collaboration is you always learn something new, because you see a new perspective, you see a new side that you would have never seen before, you hear things you never heard before. And that means your life is always, you're always expanding, you're always evolving. And
you're growing.
Yeah, you're always growing.
Yeah.
You're never stuck with your own knowledge alone.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about you?
I think to be in the world is to be with others, right? And so we're always going to have to negotiate and be with these other bodies. And this term, symbiogenesis, that's the one, it kind of reminds me of permacultural practice, and how within permaculture, the most important spaces are edges.
Is everyone familiar with permaculture?
It's like a farming practice.
Yes, farming.
Someone's laughing. They're like, yes.
Of course I am. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. But edges are super important, which is where spaces or organisms meet, right? Where the root meets the soil, or where the wave meets the sand. It's because these moments of meeting create entirely new worlds in and of themselves. So where the root actually meets the soil is this rhizome sphere, which is the most populous place on Earth, right? And where the sand meets the water is the shore.
Mm-hmm.
And there's all sorts of interactivity and all sorts of imaginative possibilities within this third space. And I think the fear of collaboration is sacrifice, maybe, but this recognition that to be a community is that there's going to be something of a loss, but also something of a gain, and to understand what is at stake within that. So maybe I let go of my desire in this moment, but I let go of it for something completely different and more fulfilling, to be with the other.
Yeah. Yeah. So really prioritizing the coming together.
Yeah.
And the space between us, whatever can
The
exist
space
in
between us, the earth, in the coming together.
The space between us is always the earth.
I love that we're talking so much about Earth.
Yeah.
It's one of the questions I ask the first and second year design students. I say, okay, like, imagine you're a material, what would you be? And then they think whatever. And for me, I always say I'm soil. So it's really nice that we're going into
that too.
Like, just that there's all these things alive, and you need to connect and you thrive. And actually, soil is only like alive when there's something in it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, it's just dead. Like, it has to make connections. It has to make something else grow and thrive. It's not the shining thing, but it's the, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I mean, it's
the
good
humility. Sorry.
It's a good feeling, right? Like this idea of everything is interlinked. It's this state of interbeing rather than just being your own, like, restricted self.
Yeah.
But I do wonder, because we're not socialized in that way, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or some of us are like raised in a Western society, like with the education we have and this individual focus. Like, I do wonder, like, what do we need to get rid of in ourselves to really be able to live and interbe, you know? What do we need to really leave behind so that we can experience this, what you're describing?
Our screens.
Our screens, yeah.
I don't know, maybe people in the audience also have something that they've done.
Well, do you have any ideas?
Things
using our hive brain. Distrust. In collaboration, especially. Yeah. Do we don't have an extra mic. Yeah. Can we borrow one?
Okay.
Yeah. Can she say that again? She has a really nice voice also.
I said distrust, and especially in collaboration. That's
yeah.
And I was also, I don't know if it's I can ask a question, but I was also wondering how you deal with that in your co-creation, collaboration, etc. If you work with different power dynamics and really trying to create something. Or if you've not done so, that's also fine. But
yeah, it's a good question. Yeah, let's go into questions.
No, I love that question, because I find that the biggest distrust I've had to encounter is the dynamic between who's holding the money and the community who needs the space. And that's always super difficult when there's money at stake.
Who holds the money and who needs the space?
Yeah, the community, right? It's like, and then as the architect or the designer, you're in between that trying to negotiate it. And then you lose the trust of the people or you lose the money. And that's a really difficult space to be in. Maybe it's situational. I don't think I've come up with a solution for that as yet. Is it possible even within capitalism?
No. I don't know. Yeah. No, it was. Yeah, I can tell you where the question came from. It was a project that the social housing company wanted to do, where they wanted to green the apartments, but people had to leave their flats, and it was this whole process of communicating, and everybody voted against it, against their at least the association saw as something that would improve their house. It would save them money in the long term, etc. But in the end, they just did not get enough people to get along with them, and the whole project was cancelled, and all of the money was gone. And I just was stuck in the cycle of how could this have been done differently, and I also just there's such a big distrust between both parties where it just can't be bridged in such a short time frame through co-creation, through collaboration. I just felt like, yeah. How to move forward from this, but
yeah.
But I totally get that, and I think what you said, money is that. But there was this one project it's still in its test phase, and the idea is that there's no hierarchy, so people with the money and the power are sitting at the same table with the people that are just the people, and I think that pride has to be set aside. And sometimes it's by the pride of the people who have the money, but I think that this question of like, can you trust? I think it goes from both ways. You have to have an even keel, and you can't have hierarchy, because if you have hierarchy, that's when you gain distrust. And if there's a way to bring everybody on the same platform, and everyone really truly listens, that's something I think a practice that needs to be enacted and tried for more and more. That could be a solution. And I've seen people try, and it's a 10-year project. They've just started, so I'm rooting for them. But I'm also feeling like it takes calling them out when it's not on even keel, when you feel that there's a hierarchy starting to put in place because of maybe patterns, automatic patterns. But yeah, you have to keep calling them out. Being willing
to make it explicit as well.
Yes.
Yeah. The power inequality. Yeah. Thank you. Do we have more questions? Also from the people at home. Maybe we can show the Menti code one more time. So if you're watching and you have a question, you go to menti.com and use the code 24970463, and we'll get your question here as well. But in the meantime, do we have more questions in this space? Any question? Yeah.
A different response to the question, what do we need to get rid of? I think, it's kind of a cliche, control kills, connection heals. I think you would sort of vibe with that as a collaborative designer. And
control kills, connection heals.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's a quote from Richard Powers' book. And anyway, but we need to acknowledge that, for example, as designers, controlling something is actually part of our work. And if you are in governance, control is also part of the work. So I wouldn't say I want to get rid of it, but there's a sort of tension field there. I wonder, for you as an collaborative artist, there are some aspects in art that you are controlling when you set up the framework, and I think for you in architecture as well. So how do you navigate this tension field between connection or letting go or trusting and controlling?
Fantastic question once again. Who wants to go first?
Yeah, I actually really love that you asked that question, because that was also my question when Lynn first introduced it, in the sense of, I don't think getting rid is the terminology, in the same way that when we're moving towards healing, for example, we're not trying to get rid of the dark aspects of ourselves, but to hold our shadows close, or to move with care in a different way. And I think about that, I suppose, within the context of design in the same way that I do within my body. But you're right to say that it's a certain amount of tension, which is that control will be a part of the process at some point, in the same way that I'm living in this structural body, right? And maybe it's almost like a back and forth, a dialogue, allowing it to be a dialogue, allowing it to be flexible, and to not hold it at any one point. Because when there is stagnancy, there is death, in the sense that nature, for example, or ecology, life, when there is life, there is growth. When there is movement, there is growth. And so if no one person is holding the control at all times, I think it's possible to act as if it's like passing around. Again,
You share control.
yeah, you share control, and you place in the parameters in which you can call out if control is being hoarded.
Yeah. And I'm also intrigued, because you're so right in terms of, our dark sides, our shadows. Like, it's not a matter of getting rid of, but what does that mean for capitalism itself? As our major dark side, as a complete species. What do we do with that then? How do we move with care when it comes to that?
I think you need a chisel and hammer. Just chip away at it slowly but surely together. Give everyone chisels and hammers. Just make sure the boundary keeps expanding a little bit better.
I don't have an answer for this.
No, I don't either.
Or else I'll be running for president. But
Mhm.
I think that this is the way that I think about this. And before even approaching capitalism, I think about what it actually took to create this colonial system and its legacies. I think about the ways in which there was a privatization and the enclosure of the commons in England, which is the enclosure of common land, common resources, and how it was held by the community to be privatized. I think about from there's the demonization of the witch, taking the female from this position of herbal medicine, which I would argue is the beginning of the medical institutional space. From there's this movement where the forest, which used to be a space of temple worship or reverence, becomes a space of resource, where it takes about 4,000, 5,000 mature oaks to create a single ship that sails across the transatlantic. And then, once on that ship, you do to the multiplicity of species or indigenous people what you did to the forest, which is to eradicate it, to create plantations. The eradication of multiple species to create one monotonous species, for example, sugarcane. And then, once you've created a standardization of land, you bring in labor. And so these aspects of communality, of women and feminism and female rights, of the multiplicity of earth and the understanding of nature and reverence of nature, of the recognition of indigenous people, as well as labor and racism entailed within that, means that if we're operating on the fight to get out of this system, then we also have to look at how all of these facets connect.
That's one powerful summary. Human
Not
history.
an answer, but it's just how I think about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And maybe also, again, the question of why, right? Like, why did we start this? And maybe there's some wisdom in there that we can still carry along with us. But what did you want to answer?
Well, I was to build on that. Like,
Yeah.
it's the practice in art, it's an artistic practice called the commonings, and it's kind of giving back these spaces to people,
Yeah.
to the giving reverence back to the land, giving reverence back to the people. To and
Can you explain what it means, a commoning?
Well, she just did. It's the
Yeah, but I know you in your work you also do it.
Well, I think the best way to describe it is, I don't know if anyone knows, there's this every 15 years there's an exhibition in Germany, Documenta in Kassel, And the latest one that just happened last year was on this theme, and it was all projects from the Global South. And it was the first time that they actually showcased projects of commoning. And I think it shook the Western perspective of art, because it was all about community and listening and people. And it was so not about the object coming to see an object. It was about how all of these projects that came from the Middle East to from Indonesia and all of the world, how they actually were able to co-curate the entire program and create this 100 days of art for the public. And they even had one art piece was a open space, accessible to the public, place for childcare, a daycare for the community, as an art piece with the design involved and thinking about the every aspect of it. So it's I forgot my point
about commoning and how,
commoning, but it's I think from a non-Western perspective, commoning is really about working together, and it's working within the community, and it's working with the space, and it's it's not. Sorry, I'm getting a little lost.
No, at
but
all.
It's something worth exploring and understanding.
And it sounds very much, it's about the process as much as it is about the end result.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah. Coming together in that. Do we have any last questions that we want to ask? One question.
Yeah, I think there is a paradox, because when we want to have more connectivity, we need to control our desire for control. So how do we reach that goal?
What? Can you say that again?
So if you want to have more connectivity, we need to control our desire for control.
We need to limit our desire for control, you mean, or you need to? I would say or?
I don't know. I don't know.
So your question is?
So the question is, how can we control this desire for control? Because it's very human to have this desire. And when we want to have more connectivity, we have to work with humans. So, how can we work with humans?
Nice meta question. How do we control our desire to control? Any thoughts, Angelina? Yeah.
How do we control our desire for control? I wouldn't actually use the term control necessarily. I would think more around letting go of the desire for control in a way that it can meet something else. But also, I was thinking about... Okay, wait, let me think.
Well, I think it's definitely an ongoing process. And I think maybe it also starts with being aware of what you said. It's an innate need to control and this need for security for yourself, maybe. But maybe if there's trust, like going back to where you said, like having trust in the people. And I think that it's easier to let go of control if you know the people and you care about the people. So spending time developing relationships with people is the most important thing. You can't just treat them like a job. You have to, I saw one somewhere, it says, be a person, not a role. Like that is the way it actually will develop. If you go into it like, okay, I'm going into this as a job, it's not going to work. It's really interrelational. And it's when you meet someone, you build that trust, then it's not really, you don't really feel the need to control anymore. At least that's what I've experienced.
Yeah.
Okay. Now you're making me think about, like, it comes from this understanding of the body, or this recognition, for example, that when we want to control, that is an aspect of the brain that's tipping into our survival instincts. For example, to get up and run, you're in danger, it's time for you to go. And it's this really beautiful desire to protect ourselves that we've learned to develop over centuries, right? But in moving into the letting go, it's about curating these spaces of care. And I think care is seminal to this process, because care goes against this system of carcerality, this system of discipline.
What does carcerality mean?
The carceral system, meaning prisons or institutions, things that punish us, in the same way that we even internalize those forms of punishment. Speaking badly to ourselves, about ourselves, the self-talk that goes on. But instead of controlling, what if it was about witnessing? Okay, I'm trying to control this right now. Okay, I'm experiencing anxiety. What if my anxiety is actually information telling me that this thing is just important? What if I was to re-story or tell myself a new story that redefined this notion of control?
Nice. Very, very interesting. Yeah. Thank you for all your questions as well. And thank you so much for sharing your thinking and thinking together in this as well. I'm really excited. Let's give you both love. I'm really excited to have Maaike Bouwmans back for our last piece of her mind.
Yes. And of my heart. Thank you, Lynn. Thank you. Thank you. So I don't actually know a lot about design, and being here this evening has inspired me so much. So really a big thank you to you. I want to do a little experiment because you talked about embodiment and how that's important, I think, in this work, and maybe in all of the work that we're involved in. So being here with all of our beautiful bodies in this space, and also being with us wherever you might be, if you're watching this at home or somewhere else, I want to invite you to maybe just tune in to your body for a bit, and maybe just notice your feet as they're connecting to the earth. I know we're on the 5th floor, so the earth is a little bit down below, but the beautiful thing about the earth, no matter where we are, is she's always there underneath, supporting us, holding us. So maybe just to connect to your own body, being among other bodies. And I think spoken word poetry for me is also kind of a prayer. And maybe we're living in times where we need more time for prayer. So here's a prayer. Hey, 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 hey. If I was a vessel, then would you use me for something bigger than yourself? If I was a dream, then would you unfold me to the sweetest reality? If I was a path, then would you walk me bare feet so you can touch me, knowing that you are blessed in every step that you take. It is in every step that you take. If I was love, then would you feel me, not afraid to express me? If I was a kiss, would you taste me with your lips? If I was truth, then would you speak me? Be me, even if no one wants to see or hear me, would you continue to stand for me? If I was joy, then would you find me in all the people and all the places that you meet each day, every day? It might be a choice to live joyfully. If I was struggle, then would you smile to me? For even if I am only ever temporary. If I am pain, would you allow me to show you what hurts? If I am fear, would you recognize me and realize what lies underneath? If I am laughter, then would you welcome me in the darkest of hours, in the darkest of days? If I am your heart, then would you take care of me? There's no need to overly protect me because I am strong. I'm much stronger than you think of me. You see, I survived heartaches and generations of loss, but I continue to love. If I was your feet, then would you walk with me, dance with me, and run with me through fields of grass and these concrete jungles that we call cities? If I was wisdom, can I settle into your body and speak through you? If I was freedom, then would you fight for me? If I get taken away, or if I was never there in the first place? If I was death and I came too soon, can I make you love life more? If I was all of your relations, If I was all of your relations, would you take care of me, knowing that you cannot live without me? If I was silence, would you make room for me, at least once, every day? If I was gratitude, would you voice me over and over and over again, saying thank you, thank you? If I am life, if I am your life, then would you lift me? Thank you.
Thank you so much. We've come to the end of our conversation here together. I really, really enjoyed it, and I learned a lot. And I feel that what you've given us, all the speakers here, the audience as well, with your questions and thoughts, the interviewees that Sarah brought in, that were amazing as well. If I feel you've given us some shaping of a process of how can we get there if we want to get to the other end, right? We want to see a different world. We want to regenerate. And how do we get there? And I feel you've given us some steps and insights. And it starts maybe with slowing down, because nature goes a bit slower, right? And slow down to also tune into the wisdom of generations, because you were born 1 million years ago. Then strike, right? Strike. Let's stop what we're doing. Exodus. I'm getting out of here. I'm not doing this anymore. And then coming together, really. Coming together with the right relations around you as well. And finding yourself also in this embodiment, economy, ecology, triangle. Then once you're together, listen. Listen, 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 and be a person. Establish that care for whoever you're with. And then imagine together. What could it be? What could it be? And once you've done that experiment, get ready to get messy. It's gonna get messy, and that's okay. That's the whole point. And share control, right? Balance the connecting and the sharing of control so that we can navigate. And then in all of that, kind of bring back what we know we've been missing, right? The feminine power, the relations with nature, the indigenous wisdom. So thank you for giving us those steps, that process. Yeah, it was really great. If you want to read more about this topic, there's a whole bunch of books here. There's also, of course, Sarah's book. And as you know, she's coming to join us here next week, next Monday at 8. And I think it's going to be a really good ending to a really good series of conversations. I want to thank you again. Thank you for being here with us. Thank you for being here in the room with us. Thank you for watching if you're at home. And it's good to say that not only is this series happening, and again, the last episode on the 27th of March on alternative systems and kind of wrapping it all up, Pakhuis-de-Zwijger also collaborated with Artes and developed a new community research program that is part of Designing Cities for All. And it's going to be in the New West location of Pakhuis, and it will offer a lot of inspiring workshops, outdoor, indoor, lectures with international experts, urban tours, artist dialogues, local community resident meetings. So you're very welcome to apply and join. The deadline for application is the 26th of March. So that's really a chance to dive even deeper. And it's also good to always mention that these programs always are going to be free and accessible for everybody. If you want to support the mission, you can become a friend of Pakhuis-de-Zwijger. You can scan the QR code that you will see soon and think along with the programs. And thank you for watching. And more info about Designing Cities for All and to watch back this episode. I think I'm really going to watch back this episode and hear like 5 times what you all had to say. You can go to dezwijger.nl/DCFA. Have a fantastic evening. And for those of you here, see you at the bar.